Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
Hey y'all, this is your guest ghost host, Lila K. I'm coming at you from the mile high to bring you chills and thrills.
And I'm your co-host, John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and scary story-loving pals? Welcome to the second year of our annual virtual campfire. This year, our first episode of this two-part special is going to be all about your hosts. That's right, your 3Haunted crew sharing their own personal paranormal experiences. Lean in if you dare.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. All right, bring us back in, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. We're back. Like Ashley said, it's just going to be us. And I made everybody else laugh this time. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, so, again, like Ashley said, it's just us going to tell you a few of our stories. I know we've touched on some of them kind of lightly throughout the season and a half so far. But yeah, we're going to elaborate a little bit more, tell you some things you haven't heard, and who knows what's going to come up.
How very ominous. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't judge us for the things that are about to come out of our mouths, because a lot of these experiences, especially my own, they scared the fuck out of me. So to share these and relive those moments, it really does tap into my energy in a way that, like, I don't always want to recall or revisit. So yeah, try not to laugh too hard at us.
I also feel that if they're judging us now on this episode, then something's wrong with them. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's true. Like if you had, I feel like if you haven't judged us by now, probably you're one of our people.
Right. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah. That was a lot more friendly.
Friendly.
I don't know why I'm so standoffish lately. I just am. I apologize.
You got fighting words.
You know, John's just trying to fight people.
Right. I'm just an ass.
All right. We're stalling.
Yes.
Who's up first? Are we going to spin the bottle for scary stories?
Yeah, no, I'll go first. Lila's doing nose goes. You can't see it. She's like, no.
Nope.
Well, I know a couple that I have Lila can join in on because they're, she's included. But one of the ones that I was wanting to kind of tell last year, and it was creepy. I don't know. It was weird. I was dating this person a while ago now, and she had 2 kids at the time, younger girls, whatever. But I had come over to visit. We were sitting there watching TV, visiting, just watching whatever. And one of the kids had a balloon. It wasn't red, so that's good. Actually, shit, I think it was red.
Ooh,
I know,
did they
makes
all
it
float
worse.
down there?
Yes, makes it worse. So the way, I don't know, it's weird. I can't explain it. But she had her air conditioner on, so obviously it would blow one way, and then a ceiling fan, and it would turn and blow the other way. Well, after we got the kids to bed, we went to go to sleep, and she turned off the air conditioner, so there was no air blowing. It was just the ceiling fan, and it wasn't on very high, so it couldn't really do anything. But we were just laying there talking, and all of a sudden she's like, "Do you hear that?" It's like, "No. What are you hearing?" She's like, "Well, go check." I'm like, "This is your house. Go check yourself. Like, I'm not doing this. Like, what the hell?" And I was like, "Fine, I'll go, I guess." And I look, and it wasn't the kids, that they were sleeping. But I go out in the living room, and the balloon that was there still had helium. It was floating towards the bedroom, which was weird because, again, the ceiling fan was blowing the other direction. And I swear to God, I literally watched the balloon dip and go underneath the table. It freaked me the hell out. I went to go check on the air conditioner. I ran because I'm not going to walk. I had to run by this balloon. I ran, and the air conditioner was off. And then I like darted back into the bedroom because I had to pass the table again and then turn the corner to get into the bedroom. And I was like, I'm not going out there again until the sun comes up. She's like, why? I was like, I just watched that damn balloon float from one side of the room to the other and go underneath your damn table. She's like, well, I told you this place was haunted. Aren't you a ghost hunter? Yeah, but I don't want to see it when I'm not ready for it. Like, what the hell?
I mean, she raises a good point. You are a paranormal investigator.
I know.
Normally that's a very exciting thing, but
Again, I'm one of the weirdos, like, if I'm sleeping
On
somewhere,
your terms.
I don't want to see it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it freaked me the hell out. I've never seen something literally just dip under a table and just sit there. I was like, yeah, no, we're good.
I feel like it's not weird to not want to have paranormal experiences when you're going to sleep.
Right.
Like, you're like, I'm one of those weirdos who doesn't want it to happen while I'm asleep. Like, no kidding. I don't think anyone. I mean, I could be wrong. There are people who probably get thrills of like laying there and, ooh, what's that? No, what was that? But
Right.
I feel like most people, when they want to go to bed, like, they want to stay asleep.
Yes. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know if I was going to wake up and see some kid that wasn't hers standing in front of my face, and I no thanks. Nope.
Oh, man. Do you think it was a kid?
I think so, because she said that she could feel things too, and so she said that she felt it was a little girl ghost because one of her daughters was potty training, so they had a little training potty. And it would make noise when you went to the bathroom. Sometimes this thing would go off by itself. I don't know if the batteries were dead or dying or whatever, but that's not a sound you'd want to hear when somebody's not tinkling on the potty.
That begs the question, do ghosts go to the body?
Right? And why would they use a tiny one on the floor and not the real one? I don't know.
Did you ever do an investigation
No.
on her place?
No, never did. I was like, yeah, you know what? That's enough evidence for me. We're good.
Now, Lila, did you ever go over there and experience anything or not?
no,
No.
I did not.
No, not this person's, but there is another place. Yeah.
What's the other place? Go on.
Just surround myself by haunted people. Okay, well, I have a couple.
By haunted people. You surround yourself
He's like, I've got
by
the
haunted
list.
people.
Yes, I have a list.
Add that
apparently.
to like your bio. I surround myself by haunted people.
I should. Uh,
I mean, you do have a podcast named 3Haunted.
Yes, exactly. I mean, hello.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Right. Now, one of the ones that does include Lila, and I know she had touched on it way back in season 1 when she was talking about how we used to go to parks and stuff. There was this one park that was down the street kind of from where I was living at the time, and my cousin, her boyfriend, and I, we would all go down there because another one of our cousins had told us, hey, you know, we were walking through here, we felt some freaky shit, you know, it's creepy, so we're like, all right, let's get that creepy vibe going, let's do it. And we all went down one night, and it's like 10 o'clock at night, so it's dark. We're not technically supposed to be there after 11, but we were still there. And we're walking down the bike path, and there's this bush, and it's like this huge tree and bush and stuff, and the three of them stop, Lila, my cousin, and her boyfriend. And I just keep walking. I'm being a smart ass at this point. I'm just, you know, whatever, I don't feel anything, blah, blah, blah. And I turn around, and I'm looking at them, and they're like, You don't see that? And I was like, no, what are you looking at? Apparently, the three of them saw a shadow like the size of a kid. Again, it's dark, and there's only, you know, a few lights in the area. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specific incident. There are other memories that I do have from there, but the exact thing that you're talking about, I have no memory of.
No? Okay. But yeah, on the right side of me, there was like a little field, and there was this big tree. It either got struck by lightning or, I don't know. I think it got struck by lightning because I don't think anybody could have chopped it down. But it was, you know, on its side and everything, and I was drawn over to that side. So we went over there after the whole shadow thing, and we were just sitting there talking, and it was a summer night. You know, obviously the wind's blowing a little bit. You can get chills. But it was a different kind of chills, like the kind that you get when get freaky shit going, I guess. And not much happened that night, but we did continue to go back. And those are some of the ones that Lila remembers. But I also remember later that week, I was working overnights, and my cousin had sent me a text, and she's like, hey, does this look familiar? And she sent me a picture of the tree. And I'm like, uh-huh. And I had already started getting goosebumps. I'm like, what is she about to tell me? Well, it turns out back in the 80s, there was a group of kids that were out playing in the creek, because the creek's like literally feet from where that was. And it was starting to get dark, so they were trying to go home. But one of the kids wanted to stay. He didn't want to go home. So he kind of fell behind and whatever. And I'm getting goosebumps now. He actually was murdered and found at that tree. Yeah. And so when she showed me the whole article about that, it just like freaked me out. I was like, there's no freaking way. That's probably why I was so drawn to that tree. And so we would go back throughout the summer and visit that tree and try to communicate with him. And we would bring like little cars and stuff. You know, here, have this in case you want to play with something. And, you know, obviously it's a park, so didn't expect it to stay there. But, you know, we'd go back the next night and there's nothing there. We just assumed that he was playing with it. So, I don't know.
See, in the memories that I have from that, I remember the tree, and I remember going back, and this was like way before we had any like actual equipment too.
Right.
This was when we were starting out, and so the only thing that we had was a recorder. And I don't ever remember if we caught anything from that, but I know that that's the only equipment that we had when we were going. Just because I was pretty young at the time. I don't remember how old, probably maybe like 8 or 9. Yeah. That sounds about right to me.
Sounds about right.
I do remember the tree. I remember going over to it and sitting down and trying to communicate. But I also, and I touched on this in season 1, because Ashley had asked me a question about when I do see figures, how I see them. And it's not shadows for me. For me, it's more light. So I see figures of light opposed to shadows. And I do remember when we were on the trail approaching the tree, seeing this like light figure standing behind the tree, and then looking away and looking back and it being gone. And I this was before we had figured out about the little boy who had died there. Yeah, our cousin and her boyfriend went with us too, and I remember standing with him at one point, so the two of us were together, and he was like just kind of sitting down on his knees, you know, getting off of his feet for a minute, and then he pulled out a cigarette and tried to light the cigarette, and so it was in between his 2 fingers, and I'm just kind of like looking over at him, and all of a sudden the cigarette pops out of his hand, like someone had gone under, pushed it up out of his hand, and it flew from there.
Yeah, there was no wind, nothing that night at all.
And he looks over at me and he goes, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, did you just drop it?" And he's like, "No." That's one of the things that it wasn't something that I had remembered until we had started this conversation. And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a thing that happened." But it was so long ago that it like just has faded in my mind, but that it was so funny to me that whoever this spirit was, whatever they were up to, they were like, "No, you're not smoking here."
Right.
Yeah, it's smoking.
And it's funny that you mentioned the light, because do you remember the night it was me, you, and him, my cousin's boyfriend? We went down again because it's just, that was our summer thing. That's what we did. And we would spend literally all night at this park. The sun would come up and we'd be going home. There was one night, though, we had parked in the parking lot, walked down to the tree, which was probably a good, I don't know, half a mile from where we parked.
It was not that far.
And there was this light, and it was coming at us. And it looked like a light from a bicycle, kind of. Mm-hmm. That's like how high it was. Like it would be on a bicycle. That's how high it was up from the ground.
Okay.
But it was moving faster than somebody on a bike. And it started to freak us out. So we started hoofing it to the freaking car. And we got in the car. I turned around and the light was there. It didn't hit the parking lot, but it like hit the edge of the grass. And there was nobody there. There was no bike, no nothing. It was just this light. And then when we turned to leave, it was gone. I have never felt scared like that from a light before, But I did not know what the hell that was. It still freaks me out. Like, I don't know.
Was I there for that?
You were there for that.
I don't remember.
I think I had to pick you up because that's how fast we were running. I'm like, nope, we're not doing this.
For whatever reason, it's like I have some very good, very solid memories of that place, and then just don't remember much. I remember going there fairly consistently.
Yes.
And I obviously
You were
still know
pretty
where that
young.
is. Yeah. So maybe that's just it. Like my little kid brain was like, nah, this is not important information to keep. Gotta get rid.
Right.
I do not remember that, but that's really funny and
Yeah, it was
a little
literally
bit spooky.
just the three of us. It was just like, I was like, nope, all right, that's not a bike. We need to freaking go now.
I feel like there's some kind of joke in there somewhere with the ghost popping out the cigarette from his fingers, like
Right?
the irony
Smoking
that like someone
kills.
dead is like, don't smoke. Yeah, smoking kills. I shouldn't joke like that, but it's just like
No,
I can't
that was
help it.
perfect though. Yeah.
Oh man, and where was this place?
This was literally down in Denver. It's off of like Wadsworth and
I don't remember
a
the
park?
park's name.
yeah, it's a park. It's like it's the Bear Creek Greenbelt is what it's called.
Okay.
It's not technically. I mean, they have a park, but it's like basically a couple lakes where people go fishing to and stuff.
It's more
Or
walking
ponds,
trails than it is like a place to bring your kids to
Yeah.
go and like
So it's
play
like an
at a
open
play
space.
place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of field, lots of all that, and a bike path that goes all the way through and literally goes from one end of whatever to the all. Yeah, it's just yeah. And we would walk that whole thing like all the time.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the electronic, the potty that would go off. And that reminded me of when I was living in Minnesota, this house that we had bought. It didn't feel haunted to me, like I felt fine. But we had gone on a trip to visit family, and when we got back, something felt different. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but my house just felt different. And I was like, huh, something's off.
Was it like an uncomfortable different, or was it like a nervous different? How was that energy?
So for me, it was like typically the home just felt neutral, right? And the more you live in it, the more it just feels like your space. And the home always felt neutral to me. Even no matter how much we lived in there and played and stuff, it just felt like a neutral space. And then when we went on that trip and came back, it felt almost like it was somebody else's home. Like I was staying in somebody else's home, and I'm like, this is weird. Maybe it's because I went on a trip and just came back and I just have to settle in. But I've never felt that way. Usually you go on a trip, you come home, it feels like home, right? But it felt off. And I remember one night we were asleep. It was the middle of the night, and like we're talking like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I want to say it was a few nights after we got back, so it wasn't even that long after. The fan light in our room had a remote control that you could control it with, but it also, has the switch. So I would always leave the switch on and just turn it off with the control and then put it on my bedside table. So it's like midnight and I had trouble falling asleep. And just as I had fallen asleep, like starting to get into that really, like deep sleep, lights turned on. Like just all the bedroom lights turned on, and I jumped up because all lights on. And I was like, what the hell? It's interesting because I'm like, my first thought is I'm sleeping on the remote. I must have fallen asleep with it next to me. So I'm looking for it. Nope. And I look and it's on the bedside table next to me. So I'm like, okay, I didn't touch the remote. And so I get a little like weirded out. And of course, Keith is like the voice of reason. And he's just like, well, if people use their garage door opener, sometimes like that signal can turn things on. So maybe our neighbor just got home, and I'm like looking out the window. I don't see anybody. But it could have been they were already in their house. And I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. I don't know. And so, we go to bed. A few nights later, same thing happened. And I jump up and I run right to the window because I'm like, is it our neighbor? Because their garage is near our bedroom wall. So it's like, okay, maybe that's it. And if that's the case, totally fine. So I go to see, and they kept later hours anyway. So I go peek out. I don't see the garage door open. Don't see it closed. Don't see any lights on in the house. And I'm like, maybe it's someone else's garage.
Still trying to reason, but more doubtfully.
Exactly. And then it happened again the next night, and around the same time, by the way. So I run to the to the window because I'm like, maybe, and at this point I was staying awake. So when it happened, I like ran to the window, nothing. Our street is just quiet and dark and nobody. And I'm just like, what the hell, man? And there aren't houses behind us. Like, we backed up to the street, so it wasn't like there's a house behind us that might be triggering it. And of course, Keith is like, well, maybe they have a remote in their house. They're watching TV. Maybe it's somehow triggering. And I'm like, look here, mister. It's going through that many walls. And, but it's like, okay. So I started at night, like, I always check before we go to bed. I check to make sure everything's off. So I check the house. Everything's off because I'm the last one to go to sleep. Come upstairs. Well, one morning, I got up before everybody else. And I go downstairs. And I see the room that I would work out in. I see that there's a glow coming from in there, like a TV glow. And I'm like, I know I turned that off. I'm pretty sure I turned that off because I went to bed last. And I'm just like, I'm the first one up this morning. And so I go in there, TV's on, I turn it off. And I'm just like, oh, that's weird. Maybe I forgot to turn it off. And like 3 nights in a row, I would wake up in the morning and that room is glowing. Or I would come down in the middle of the night to get water or something and the room's glowing. And with the light, the TV's on, or of the TV. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Because none of that was happening before our trip. I would understand if that would happen, but suddenly it's happening, like the light in the, in the bedroom, and then the fitness room TV being on in the middle of the night. And I'm just like, what the hell? And so Keith tried to call me, and so he started making a joke that we have a ghost of non-essential electronics. and and he's like, it's fine. If the worst thing it does is mess with the electronics, like, we're golden. And I'm just like... I know, and he was trying to calm me because I'm getting really freaked out and I didn't want to go to sleep. And I don't even know. So I started sleeping with the light switch off, and I told him, if that thing turns on with the light switch off, I'm like, we're moving. Like, we're leaving.
Gotta go.
I'm not living in a fucking haunted house. And we had lived in that house for almost a year before any of this had just shifted and happened. So it happened for about 3 weeks or about a month. And I just started, like, I had reached out to a friend, and I'm like, what should I do? Because I really don't want to live with the ghost. and I don't want the stuff to escalate, like the experiences or phenomena to escalate. And so, because, we've heard of that kind of stuff happening where it starts small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just like, you know what? Let's just nip it in the bud. I have children, and even if I didn't have children, I don't fucking want ghosts. So... what do we do? And so they were just recommending some like cleansing things I could do. And they're like, talk to your ghost and tell it to leave. They're not welcome. You own that house and it's your house. And I'm like, I think I own it. I mean, I think it's mine. I don't know. This thing just came in out of nowhere, or it woke up. I don't know. Like, do ghosts just appear? Like, it was really weird.
And now it wants to watch TV.
Yeah.
Apparently, it wants to watch TV and turn on my light because it's bored at night and it wants someone to talk to. I don't know. Right. But about a month after it happened, I tried to cleanse and do things. And I don't think I did anything like specific or spectacular, but it just stopped. Like, the activity stopped. And so it was like about a month. And I don't know. Like, it was really weird to me, but I don't know what that was. I don't think it was my neighbor's remote control. I don't, but at the end of the day, I just don't know. And the fact that it was like a month of activity, I don't know.
Right. And I was thinking poltergeist activity, but then again, your kids are still not even teenagers yet. So even back then, it couldn't have been that whole thing. So I have no idea. Unless somehow you were doing it with anxiety or I don't know. But yeah.
I knew you were going to say, I was waiting for that. They're like, maybe not your kids, but it was you.
I mean, I don't know, but yeah.
And maybe, you make a good point, maybe, because oddly enough, that happens here occasionally.
Oh, jeez.
It was only when it doesn't do it anymore, but when
Right.
we first moved here, this TV next to me, you can't see it, I guess, but there's a TV on this wall. It would be on. And I would like turn it off, and I would make sure, like, because I thought I was losing my mind when I would come downstairs in the morning and it's on. I would turn it off, and then when I would come in the morning, it would be on. What freaked me out is that sometimes I would be in here when it would turn on.
Oh, hell no.
And it wasn't like a specific time of the day or night. Usually it would be at night when I would notice it, but I would be in here working out or working on something or whatever, and it would just turn on. And I'm like, I didn't do that. And Keith, again, he's like, well, our neighbors could have a remote that. I'm like,
He's very
feel
set on the
like-
remotes.
Yes.
he is. And it's just like, and I mean, kudos to him for trying and calm me and
Of
be the
course.
voice of reason. But it's just like, if that's the case, wouldn't that happen all the time?
Yeah.
Like every time they touch their remote, they have a lot of people in their house. And so it's like, I feel like that would happen a whole lot more often if it were a remote crossing over. But I don't, and now that I know my neighbors and I've been inside of their house, I'm just like, their TV's on the opposite side of their house. So if anything, they'd be turning the other person's house or the other person's TV on the other side of them, not ours. But based
But like
on
you
where
said,
things
that's
are
a
in
lot
their
of
home.
walls.
That is a lot of walls. So I don't know, but so that was doing that for quite a bit when we first moved here, and it doesn't do it anymore. So maybe it is. I moved here, I was anxious. Maybe I'm the ghost of non-essential electronics, and I don't even realize it. I power things up.
There you go.
I have no explanation. I really
No,
don't. But it got to the point where it was freaking me out here that I would just unplug the TV and leave it unplugged. Because I'm like, if that thing turns on when it's unplugged, we're moving.
Exactly.
Know your
My answer is
boundaries.
always, we're moving.
There you
Yep.
go.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh my God. Now that
Yeah,
I'm
that-
thinking about that. But that actually used to happen to me in high school.
I'm sorry I brought it all up.
I had a TV in my room that would just turn on. And it would freak out when my sister would sleep in my room sometimes. It would freak her out because it would just turn on. And I'm like, in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, I got to the point where I would just unplug it because I'm like, it's freaking her out. It just does that. And I was so unaffected by it because it just happened that I'm like, I always thought the TV was shorting out. I didn't even think of like put all of that together until we are just talking about all these TV things. But like, it was a big TV that my mom had given me that used to be hers, and so I thought it's just old, and so it just like it's turning itself on, it's shorting. Like older stuff will sometimes turn on, and so it's just like maybe that's what that is. So it never bothered me, but shit, apparently TVs like to turn on around me. You can say I turn things on.
But boom.
So then do you think that that's someone or something trying to communicate with you, trying to get at your attention? Maybe someone's trying to talk to you through TVs.
Shit, I don't want it to talk to me through TVs. They're like,
I
look,
don't know.
bitch, we know you stare at this screen all the time. You don't take your eyes off of this.
Now pay attention to it more.
Yeah, now pay attention and listen to what I'm saying. I don't know. That's, heebie-jeebies. Moving on.
Oh, goodness.
Oh.
Poor Ashley.
But, I like the process of trying to go through and debunk. Going through and saying, oh, well, it could be this, even though it's probably not your neighbor's TV remote. But, that is
Or
an
your
extra
garage
thing
door
to...
opener.
Yes.
Exactly. That's a thing to, consider, especially when we're talking about ghost stories or our own experiences. And I think it's important for more people to do that in the paranormal field is debunking. Realizing, hey, this TV might be malfunctioning. It might not actually be a ghost trying to turn it on. Or, hey, what was that noise that I heard? Maybe that wasn't a ghost. Maybe that was just the wind or some weird bird outside, you know. Going through that process. Or a bird. It's always a bird.
Lila's on those weird birds.
I like birds. That has nothing to do with this.
That same house in Minnesota, I was laying down with Graham, and I think this was around that same time frame, by the way. I had been laying down with Graham. He was taking a nap, and this child, once upon a time, would not let me, let him go when he was sleeping. And so I was laying there with him, held captive, but I was awake. And I remember laying there, and it had just snowed, and I know it was a little bit windy. And you know when wind goes through the attic, like how they have the vents in the attic, you can hear like the rustling and stuff. So I could hear the thing banging, opening and banging closed, and it's like, okay, it's windy, it's snowy out, makes sense. But I remember as I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm probably on my phone, I paused. Because something in my brain registered before my conscious mind did, right? Like, it's like, hey, pay attention. And so I pause and I listen, or I tune into what I'm actually listening to. And I hear the sounds of what sounds like really heavy boots walking across that. I don't want to call it an attic, but it's like that crawl space, right? At the top of or underneath the roof. And so I can hear it. It sounds like someone is walking. It's not like an animal because it's heavy. It's boosh, boosh, boosh. And I'm like, what the fuck is in my attic? Excuse my language, but like, what is up there? I'm like, I know a person can't fit up there. What is that? And I know a person can't get up there. I don't know what to, and it's like it goes like it's going slowly across, and you can hear it. And I grab my phone is there. I grab it, I turn the video on and I start recording it. Cause I'm like, that's how loud it was. I'm like, that is loud. And I record it, and I'm hitting record just listening to this. And I'm like, surely there's not someone up there, right? Like, that's not possible, right? Like, they would fall through the ceiling, wouldn't they? And it's just like, I was sitting there recording it, and it lasted for a good few minutes. Like, someone was taking their time walking across really heavy, footsteps and slow. And I sent it to Keith. And I'm like, what is in there? What's going on? And he's like, oh, it's probably the wind knocking something around. And I'm like, knocking what around? There's nothing but insulation up there. And by the way, if the wind's knocking something around, it's not going to have those slow, gated steps going across. And I'm like, I think it's time to move. I don't know what's going on, but I think I'm done.
So now we know every time Ashley moves, we know why now.
Exactly. We're going to have to start asking questions if you keep moving around. You're not going to like it. We're going to have those talks.
I am telling you, stuff almost seems to happen right before I move. So it's not the move that causes, or it's not that causes the move, but it's really weird that stuff, I notice activity does seem to spike up right before I move. Because that happened in Utah too. We'd rented a home and we lived there for 2 years, and there's nothing going on in that house. But I'm lying. I had things that occurred. But I'm gonna shut up. I just remembered. Yeah, there was shit that happened.
So things happened, but it was things towards that you don't want to discuss.
Well, no, it's not that. It was it wasn't the first year. It was more towards the end. But it might have been more because I was engaging in that world a bit more, going out to metaphysical, paranormal type events. And so I don't know if I was open in a way that was resonating and calling that kind of activity in without realizing it. I don't know. I wasn't playing with the Ouija board at the house. Let's be clear. But it just I don't know. But I do know that the second year we were there, I think I might have told you guys about this last season when I had that sleep paralysis experience.
Yeah, I think you. Yeah.
So I was in Utah asleep. My kids were asleep in their room. And my dog is very protective of them. So she was sleeping in their room. She would sleep in front of their door, like in their doorway. And I remember waking up and it's like, shit, another episode of sleep paralysis. I can't wake up. But then I felt something really like ice cold in my chest. And I looked to the foot of my bed and there's like this dude standing there just staring at me. And I know it's not a human physical person in my room because like I just know. And I'm like, close your eyes, close your eyes, close your eyes, close your eyes, go back to sleep. And I somehow was able to get myself to go back to sleep. But then I woke back up in sleep paralysis. And this time there's a woman at the foot of my bed and she is raging. She is like screaming at me, raging. But she's not moving past the foot of my bed. She like the energy and the malice in her is just like, it's just coming off in waves. And I'm like, this is the worst dream ever. Like, I don't want to be here. I want to go back to sleep. But something in the way she's raging, I almost felt like I'm in trouble. And the longer I stay in this middle space, I'm in trouble. But before I can even like think about what I'm going to do to go back to sleep or wake up, I hear my dog book it from the end of the hallway all the way in barking. And she jumps onto the bed and just plants her entire body on top of me. This is a dog who thinks she's a cat. She sleeps in the sun all day. She's not a lap dog. She doesn't lay on me. She doesn't get on the bed and sleep on me. That's not her thing. So for her to run in barking like something, her guard bark, because she is kind of a guard dog, her guard bark like something's intruding on her territory and then jumping right on me, it was like, uh-oh, what did she sense?
Right.
And by her jumping on me, it actually woke me all the way up. So I snapped out of it and the lady was gone. And I'm like, thank you so much, Luna. I love you. I'm going to give you the best treats ever. It was interesting because she wouldn't leave my side like the rest of the night. And maybe she sensed my panic, but I feel like I've had a lot of sleep paralysis before with her in the house. So I don't know what it was about that specific moment, but she was very triggered by that. Like her alertness and like something she has to guard, she has to protect. When everybody moved back to Denver, I had to stay in that house to wait for the movers to come get everything. In that last few weeks there, I had been sitting watching TV in the middle of the night, and Luna went to the basement door and started doing her guard bark again, and she wouldn't leave the door. And I was like, oh God, there's someone in the house. And that's what my thought was. So I didn't go straight to ghosts. It was like, oh shit, there's someone in the house. Because she only barks like that when she feels someone is intruding on the territory. So I called a friend and I'm like, I'm alone and I think there's someone in there and I don't know what to do. And they're like, well, you could call the cops if you really think there's someone there. And I'm like, but there's only one way in there. I mean, granted, there's the windows from the window wells, but those would be really hard to get through. So I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go down there. So
wow, braving the basement.
I know, obviously I don't watch enough horror movies to know better. So, but I had Luna next to me. I'm like, all right, Luna, get him. And I opened the door. Which, by the way, she's a weenie. She's got a really mean bark, but she's a weenie. So I'm like, she's not gonna do anything. She went down there. Anyways, like she went, as soon as I opened it, she booked it down there. I'm like, that's not good. And I went down with her and I like went through every corner of that like basement and the basement room and like the storage. There was nothing in there, but she was like sniffing the whole place. Like there was something down there. And I'm like, please don't go to like a spot in the wall and start growling. Cause well, we're moving. So I can't say we're going to move.
Right.
Yeah. So I actually called, Tanya, my meta mama. I called her and I'm like, can you come stay the night with me?
Oh man, that's crazy.
I don't know what happened.
As someone who hasn't had any experiences with sleep paralysis and I don't know what that's like, how well do you remember those encounters? Like, do you remember what this guy and this woman both looked like? Do you remember like what they were trying to say to you? What was that experience like for you?
I remember sleep paralysis experiences fairly well if there is a presence that was present during that time. or something that I feel was like an intruder, even if it's a manifestation of my dreams or whatever, like if it feels like something's there that doesn't belong. I will say this. I have had sleep paralysis since I was a very little kid. Like we're talking as far as I can remember, as far back as like 4 or 5. I've always experienced that. It used to be more frequently, but now it's not as frequent. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to distinguish when something is a manifestation of my dream. Like it just feels like a dream is playing out. And even though it's scary, I still don't like it. I know I'm dreaming. There have been some instances where I'm like, I don't think this is a dream. And then I'm extra terrified. What I think they might have been trying to say to me, I don't know. I feel like I was extra open that evening. And so I had a few visitors maybe that were trying to talk to me maybe. But I don't know, because like with the lady, I remember what she looks like. And I remember she was just angry. And it was like like I said, she was raging. And it was the worst rage. And I don't know why. But it was very angry, raging, screaming at me. And when you're in sleep paralysis, sound is very magnified. So that can be extremely painful. Even if it's not real sound in the room and it's something that your brain is producing, like you think you're hearing something, it is painful. And I know that sounds weird, like how can you hear something that's not there? Oftentimes with sleep paralysis, when somebody is asleep, if you have auditory encounters, I don't know how else to describe that, and that's not like a paranormal thing. If you're asleep and your brain is producing sounds or what it thinks it's hearing, it isn't sounds that necessarily make sense. So for me, it's almost like I'm hearing a humming when I have sleep paralysis, or like a vibrating of like 10,000 voices, sometimes all at once. It's very uncomfortable. And I've heard, I've read articles and I've heard people on YouTube explain like that, what that is. And it's just like everything your brain's trying to process and it does it all at once. It's uncomfortable and it's really awful. And I don't know how to explain that discomfort of that sound because it is like 10,000 people talking all at once. And usually it starts as like a whisper, but the longer I'm in sleep paralysis, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder until it's almost unbearable. Which is why I don't just hang out in sleep paralysis. Like, I'll wake up eventually. You want out of it because something is happening that isn't comfortable. Even if it is a scientific biological thing, it doesn't feel so nice. I don't know if that helped answer your question at all.
No, that did. Thank you.
I just like watching your face when she's talking because you look angry, but you're not. Like
I'm listening.
I know her listening face is like just a mean face. I don't know. It's just I don't know.
Oh, I hope that doesn't come across. That's not what I.
That's just how I see it.
I didn't think so.
Maybe I'm just feisty. I don't know.
Yeah, you're just trying to
I'm just
fight.
starting stuff.
I want to hear another ghost story from you guys. What you have? Give me what you got.
What you got, kid?
Okay, I got one. Sorry, I had to think. Just never mind the dead silence.
I'm excited. Nah, I cut those out.
I figured as much. I was sitting there and I was like, oh no. So when I was back in middle school, I used to walk to and from school a lot. And there was this creek that I used to walk past. A friend of mine and I lived in the complexes next to each other, so it wasn't the same building, but our buildings were very close to each other. So we would just kind of walk home together, especially when it started getting dark out earlier. And I remember we were just kind of goofing around one day. We would hang out after school by the creek and try to build ourselves a little like hut or a little tent out of a bunch of sticks and kind of have our own space in this like wooded area. So we would do that every so often after school, just put a bunch of sticks together and hope that the other kids didn't come by and destroy it after. So we were going from the creek up to our complex and there was this path, this dirt path that we could take to get up the hill so that we didn't have to go all the way by the main street and cut around that way. It was kind of cold, it was very dark out, and we're just goofing around, hanging out, laughing, doing our thing. I'm walking forward and I see this creature, not even like a humanoid figure. It looked like this giant dog come across from the top of the hill and ran all the way down. And this thing was fast. It wasn't even like a dog. It looked like one, but it was so much faster than that. It went from the top of the hill, ran all the way to the bottom, and straight into the creek. and I lost sight of it because of the trees. I didn't know where it went, but I saw that happen in like the blink of an eye. I freaked out. I turn around, ran smack into my friend behind me, get the wind knocked out of me. I'm like pushed back. And she's like, what happened? What happened? What are you freaking out for? And I was like, you didn't see that thing just run by? What are you talking about? And so I tried to explain to her that there was this giant light dog, pretty much, just running across. And she was like, I didn't see it. Are you okay? And I was like, I think I need to go home. And so I went home, and like I was still in pain because I ran smack into her, and I had like run from the chest, so it like knocked the wind out of me, and it hurt physically, so I had to like lay down and just kind of chill after that. And so when I was laying down, I was like, I don't even know how to explain what I saw, because it looked like a dog, but it looked a lot bigger and a lot faster, but it wasn't, I guess, angry is the right word. Like, I wasn't scared that it was going to come at me and hurt me. I was more scared because what the heck did I just see run past my face? And why did nobody else see that? And I was telling you, Dad, about this afterwards. And I know that you've had your own experiences. So we've both seen similar creatures.
Yes.
In these different contexts. And it's... Do you want to go ahead? I'm going to stop that there and then just...
Well, that brought up a whole thing that I haven't thought of in a while either, and it's just so funny how this works. Like she said, I've seen weird light things like I discussed earlier, but a friend of mine that got me into the whole witchcraft stuff, we were walking by, again, it's another park. It's the Mexican Hat Park down in Bear Valley. I don't know if you big sombrero slide, that whole thing. Well, on the other side of that, there's, a bunch of woods. Well, not anymore. There's apartments and stuff now. But there's a bunch of woods and stuff, and it leads up to a road that is across the street from a cemetery. So we were hanging out with a coworker of ours. We both worked at the same place. We're walking around the park. We go up to the street where the cemetery's on the other side. And all of a sudden, there's this, like, a white light. And it was closer to the ground. And it was fast, like Lila was describing with her dog thing. It went towards the cemetery. And there's a big old fence there. There was no hole in the fence. And the grass was pretty long because it was summer and it had rained a lot. But the grass was bent the opposite direction of where the light flew in. So it went forward and the grass was bent backwards. It was the weirdest freaking thing. I don't know what it was. It was so, and only he and I saw it. Our coworker, she did not. She's like, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. I didn't see any light, anything. Because at first we thought it was like maybe a rabbit or something because it was so fast.
That's weird.
But rabbits don't glow. So, I
Neither
don't know.
do dogs.
No, they don't.
And I feel like I should note that cemetery, the Hat Park that we're talking about, that's all by the same creek that I had passed.
Exactly, it's all
just
the same
on
creek.
very different sides.
Sections, yep.
Yeah, so there's quite a distance apart, but it is that same creek
Right.
that runs through.
Yeah.
What do you guys think that creature is? Like, do you think it is a manifestation of something else in like this form, and that's how like you guys translate it when you see it? Like John translates it in his brain to like this white light, and you see more of like this animal, because you tend to have an affinity towards animals anyways. Do you think maybe that's how you process the energy that you're experiencing?
Maybe. I mean, that could be it. A way that I can describe how it looked when I had seen it, and it did obviously go by very fast, was a really buff, really muscular greyhound dog. Like, that is what it looked like to me. And I know that you've also seen it in other places as well, and Kevin did too. Do you remember that?
I remember the crawlers, but...
That it was the same thing that I was talking about.
That's right, okay.
It's all the same.
All right, yeah, that's right. So, this goes back to, I don't know, 2011-ish. I'm going to try to make this very long story somewhat shorter. But in 2011 or so, there was a paranormal show on TV. They would put... two up-and-coming teams or whatever against each other to see who could come up with the best evidence in a haunted location that the TV people had already investigated and done. There was a team from Lakewood that was on there. The friends that I was a part of a group with had called me and they're like, hey, check this team out. They're on TV. They're from Colorado. They're from Lakewood, blah, blah, blah. So I watched it. They were doing pretty good. They, come out with some good stuff. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to follow them on Facebook and see, because this was when I was trying to get into the paranormal more, and the team that I was with, we weren't doing much at the time. And so, I became friends with the leader and everything. Where they were investigating was Jerome, Arizona. And she decided to go back a year later after they had won the episode to go back and kind of film like her own documentary type thing, and also apologize to the spirits because she had to provoke in order to get responses and stuff, and she felt bad for that, and it was eating away at her and whatever. So she wanted to go back and apologize to the spirits to kind of make herself feel better about it and to make peace with that. And she had asked if I wanted to come along, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Well, she told me stories about these things called crawlers, that's what she called them, that were like Lila described, muscular greyhounds. That's the best way I've actually heard that described, to be honest with you. And they would be all over in the rooms and stuff. And they were huge. They're just big. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. I don't know how much of that I believe. I'm still new into the field. I don't know what's fake, who's messing with me, whatever. I didn't see anything when I went with them in 2012. But, oh wait, I lied. I did. It was, again, it was like September, October, and there was a thunderstorm coming. And the hotel is on top of a mountain. And it's a big, like, hill to get from the town up to the hotel. And we were walking. There were 4 of us. It was the team leader, their camera guy, and another investigator, and myself. And it was me and the camera guy. We were lagging behind. We were just sitting there talking because he was kind of new into this the whole thing too. And all of a sudden he stops and he's like, do you see that in front of us? No, I don't see anything. It's dark and whatever, and it's getting ready to rain, and we should probably get our asses up the hill to the hotel so we don't get wet. And then all of a sudden, lightning flashes, and I see this thing just zoom by, like real fast, like we've all been discussing. And it went down the side of the mountain, and it's steep. It's like there's a road to drive down and up it. So I look, and there was nothing there. I caught like a glimpse of a leg or an arm or something. It was brown. It was the weirdest freaking thing ever. And that was my one thing. I'm pretty sure it was one of those crawlers. It couldn't have been a deer. It couldn't have been whatever, because we would have seen it run by. And it was like the lightning scared it, and then the thunder, when it boomed, scared it even more, so it just took off. Apparently it was in front of us, and it went down the side of the mountain. That was the only time I had seen one of those there. Fast forward to a few years later, we're investigating the Oriental Theater here in Denver, and our team's psychic, with Luana's team, she is like, hey, what did those crawler things look like? And I was like, why? She's like, because I think there's one here up in the vents, because she caught a glimpse of something up there that she didn't feel was, natural or whatever. And so we went and tried to find it, and I again caught just a little bit of something, and that was it. So I don't know what they are. Again, I didn't feel scared, kind of like Lila was saying. She didn't feel like it was going to attack her. But I don't know. I don't know if they're messengers for something else, or if they're just watchers technically to watch to see if everything's the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, freaky shit.
It's just interesting that you guys see different versions of it, and it makes me think of like how people experience energy differently. So some people have the gift of sight, some people have the gift of, feeling, like with the empathy, they can feel spirits, but they can't see them, and so forth. So I just kind of wonder if that's why you guys experience that in that way. So similar, but not quite, if that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and I will say, and reiterate that I feel no malintent from them. So I freaked out more because I was shocked than scared. And I know maybe it was the first time that I had gone up to Jerome too. There were a few of us who had gone, and I won't speak on Kevin's behalf just because he isn't here to tell his side of the story and what he experienced. But we had the opportunity when we were in Jerome to go investigate with another team in this warehouse that was down from the hotel.
Right. It wasn't even a warehouse. It was an old building, and literally, well, I guess kind of a warehouse, but not really. There was a woodworker that did his work on the bottom half, and then there was a lady who owned a crystal shop. She was actually from Colorado, who I met back in 2012, who had just moved to Arizona literally like 2 weeks before we got there. And they were the only ones in that building. The rest of it was like 3 floors up, absolutely nothing. It used to be part of the old hospital, which the hotel was too. So it was all empty except for the bottom, and I'll let you continue.
Yeah, and so the way that I remember us going inside is when we had all met up, there was this big open space in the middle where we got together and we're talking about like the plan and how the investigation was going to go, and it was unfinished. Like, the wallpaper wasn't wallpaper, there were paint chips, things like that. So if that's any imagery that you can use to figure out what this looked like, it was unfinished. But there were multiple rooms, and we would go from room to room. And I remember we were in a hallway, and you could go either left or you could go right. And I was following the team and going in on the left, and then the two of you had gone into the right room, and all of a sudden you booked it right back out.
Yeah.
And I looked and I was like, what was that? What was happening? And you're like, no, I don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk. We'll have that conversation later. And I was like,
yeah.
Did you see one of these things?
Yes, I remember Kevin actually did, and yeah, we had talked about it, and she didn't want to talk, but I remember him telling me specifically, he's like, I just saw one of those fucking things. I'm scared. I'm like, all right, cool, let's go. So, like she said, we booked it back to where they were, and it was just, oh my goodness, yeah.
And I don't know if it was the place or if it's us as people. I haven't seen one of these things in years since we had gone and explored in that area, in that old warehouse. I haven't heard of any other cases. I haven't seen anything personally, so it's been quite a few years. But, I my personal stance is they are some sort of guardian. They are some sort of messenger. They don't mean any harm. They just look really big and really scary, yes. But that's not what they are. Ask me what they are, and that.
Did they have claws?
They did. Their
yes.
hands were like big claws. So I don't know. I mean, how familiar you are with like Resident Evil 2? I don't know how familiar you are with the game or any of that. Okay, well, I will show you a picture and we can post it later. But like, there's these things called lickers. They have these really long tongues. I know it sounds very perverted, but that's what they look like to me. Is one of those creatures. Yeah.
Lick a tongue with claws.
And they were just freaky. Yes, but
scarier. On 4 legs.
On 4 legs. They crawl like mothers.
Okay, can I tell you guys something?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So when I feel energy, my brain tries to process images with it based on what that feeling is. So I think you guys heard me talk about this with it was either Lady Luna or one of our recent guests, where like when I feel something, I see the face in my head, or I see it interlaid. Like it's almost like it's laid on top of the real world,
right,
based on the energy that I'm feeling. So in Utah, some of the places I went there where there was a lot of heavy activity, where there felt like there was a large entity there. Not large like a giant, but like a lot of energy based around one entity. There were a few instances where I felt something else, like a bunch of curious, not a bunch, but like more than one curious creatures, and the energy was like, ooh, what is that? That doesn't feel human. That's creepy. And my brain processed like this anthropomorphic thing with like claws, and but that's not what I saw, because I didn't see them. Mm-hmm. I felt them, and I felt them like curiously like encroaching when like that energy would kind of radiate out, almost like they were drawn to it, like moths to a light, like that curiosity. But the energy that I felt in my head, the image that would pop up would be like these anthropomorphic, like quadrupedal things with claws. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And when I described what I was feeling and seeing, someone there who was familiar with, I guess, like Utah metaphysical and energy and all that, they had a name for them. they called them the Numena. And they're like, oh, don't worry, that's just the Numena. They're annoying, but they don't mean harm. They don't do anything. They're just drawn to places with heavy energy.
That makes sense.
And I'm like, but that's scary.
Exactly.
Like, what I'm seeing based on the energy is scary. And they're like, it's fine, okay? Don't worry about it. They're not going to hurt you. They're just curious. Just think of them like moths to hot spots, basically. And I was like, okay. But I've been to a lot of places that have different types of like energy levels and activity, but I have never felt those things except in Utah, when I was in Utah.
Right. And I had sent you 2 pictures. I don't know if you got them or not, but yeah, I found 2 of the...
Oh,
yeah.
Let me check.
But like Lila was saying, it's been a while since we've...
Oh my God, that's the Numena.
I told you. I fucking told you. I knew it.
Especially that,
one?
well, yeah,
Yep.
the bottom one, but with the top's
Yeah.
arms.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we are seeing the exact same thing.
Wow.
But I don't see it. That's what, when I feel them.
Right.
But what that translates, my brain
That's what
translates it to
yeah.
is
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things.
Isn't that...
I am about to
creepy.
lose it. That is
That's
insane.
crazy. But what I was saying before...
And that's why I asked
Right.
you guys.
About the
like,
claws.
and exactly, the claws, and like, is it something you see or is it you're translating? Because for me, like I said, I don't see
Right.
that. You guys have seen it. For me, it's an image that my brain
Right.
translates based on what I'm
Right.
feeling. And so I was like, what do you think it is?
That's fucking crazy.
That's why I asked about
Oh
the
my
claws.
goodness. I figured as soon as you said that you had, yeah, I knew that's what it was. But like what Lila was saying was, it's been a while since we've seen it. We went in 2014, me, Lila, Kevin, and our friend Lisa. That's when Kevin and I had seen the one. And then Lila, Kevin, and I, and Luana's mom and Luana's daughter, we went back in 2016. And I was telling them about that. Luckily enough, for them, we didn't see one because her daughter was not comfortable with seeing one of those things, as you can tell, because we've
Because
Amen,
they
man.
look
I don't wanna
terrifying.
see-
they
Yeah.
definitely look terrifying. Yeah. So I think it's weird that I've seen it in Arizona, you've seen it in Utah, and we've seen it here in Colorado now. That's just that's weird. Like, I wonder where else they are.
I mean, if it's like that person had said, where they're drawn to hot spots.
I'm sitting here, I'm in shock because when I had seen that the first time around and had that first experience, I had never heard of this, these stories before. Like, Dad has never told me anything about that. I didn't know that you had your own experiences. Like,
Until
this
after the
was
fact.
something new. And so when I had brought it up and he was like, oh yeah, like I know what you're talking about, I've seen that, I was like, what do you mean you know what I'm talking about? And I feel like when people hear about ghosts, when people hear about spirits, things like that, it's human or humanoid, not so much creatures or something that takes on different shapes, at least not in that sense, the way that this presents itself. And so I've always been very hesitant to share that experience and talk about that, especially with anyone who is not in the paranormal community, things like that, even those who are in that community, because I'm like, well, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't want to think, I don't want anyone to think I'm crazy, or I don't want them to disregard me as an investigator because they're like, oh, she's just hallucinating or things like that. But like, now hearing that even you have had some sort of experience, even though it's not seeing it and having that like direct connection, but knowing of them, that just, I can't really wrap my head around that, but it makes me feel very validated in my own experiences.
It's like a double-edged sword, because it's like you relate or connect over something like, oh my God, you too, and it's just like, oh God, somebody else, okay, then I'm not crazy. But then at the same time, it's like, oh shit, it's real. And, like, oh no. And that's how it is every time I talk about this stuff to people. I'm like, well, they're gonna think I'm crazy, I'm gonna get committed or something. But then it's like, when someone else is like, oh no, don't worry, it's just that, or they're like, I had that experience too, it's just like, oh, I'm not crazy. This is real. I don't know if I feel good about that. I will say this because we talk I feel like the amount of level that we talk about the metaphysical and supernatural experiences, we probably do come across as like very woo-woo, it's aliens guy. And I just want a disclaimer to our listeners. I know John, I know Lila, and I can speak for myself. This is not stuff. The stuff that we talk about, this is not stuff we see daily. This is not stuff we experience daily. So it's not like we're walking around hallucinating the world. Have I had a heavy level of experiences in my life? Absolutely. But I've also tried to disprove every single one because it's a whole lot easier to believe in the 3D physical world and not be afraid than it is to believe that everything is paranormal or supernatural or metaphysical. So every single experience I've gone through, I've probably gone the extreme opposite of illogical just to disprove it. And I've had people along the way like Keith and others who are like, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. And I'm always gonna, every experience, still have that level of doubt. Maybe it was something else. What? I don't know. But at the end of the day, sometimes you do have to just acknowledge, I've exhausted so many ideas of what that could be. And I'm not saying it's ghosts. I'm not saying it's whatever. But I am saying, I don't know what the hell that was, but it was freaky.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Lila said earlier, debunk, 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 debunk. Debunk until you cannot debunk anymore, and then what you've got left. And even Luana has said it, a few times on the episodes. With, whatever you got left, is it necessarily paranormal? No. But do we know what it is? Sure the fuck don't. So.
Sure the fuck don't. And we don't always. And I think the things we've learned from our guests up until this point is that just because we don't know what it is, and just because it may not be like our Numena humanoid creature, it may look or feel unnerving, it doesn't mean it is negative. And we just have to remember to keep our vibrations raised up so we don't pull in the negative. Because I really don't want people rage screaming at me in my sleep anymore. That would be cool.
Just speaking that out into existence.
Yes.
Just putting that out into the universe. If we could keep those beings I get you're angry, but I can't help you. I don't know what you're mad about. Use your words, not your rage.
Think about your words.
I was just...
Sorry.
I was just going to say that.
Well, hot damn, this has been an awesome episode. Like, wow. I love the correlation and connections we've made of our experiences.
Oh my God.
Do you guys have any final thoughts?
I guess I'm curious to find out that when this episode releases, has anyone else had these same experiences? Right. Whether that's like the sleep paralysis or it's these crawlers, the Numena, whatever you want to call them.
Lickers.
I'm so curious to hear about everyone else's responses, and I believe that there's strength in numbers, and the more people who are open about those experiences, the less taboo the subject becomes.
Exactly. And again, debunk, that's all anybody can ask for. Is not everything is paranormal, not everything is scary. Just debunk until you can debunk no more, and English is hard. So
And similar to what Lila's saying, if you have experiences on any of the topics that we've talked about, this episode or other episodes, and you want to just keep it private but connect to people that have experienced things too because you don't know who else to talk to and you don't want to sound crazy, we go out on a limb to sound crazy for everybody else. So if you just want someone to talk to you can always email us, reach out to us. We are happy to talk to you about whatever. We'll keep it anonymous or we won't talk about it at all on the podcast. We are here for you.
Exactly. Reach out.
All right, Lila, bring us home.
Thank you so much, Metapals, for tuning into this week's episode of 3Haunted. If you have any questions, episode suggestions, anything like that you want to go ahead and share with us, go ahead and email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. We'll see you in the next one.
And with that, thank you everybody for listening to part 1 of our Ghost Stories episode. I am your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess.
I'm Lila Kay.
And as always, I'm the smartass John Thomas.
Until next time.